We all know the story the media is telling us about Jacob Blake. The man is pretty much a hero now. I mean, at the very mention of his name, I'm sure you all had a million headlines flash through your heads with all the fawning admiration for the latest victim of monstrous and racist American police apparatus. The WNBA, which is a basketball league that women play in, posed with T-shirts that spelled out his name. Drew Brees and other New Orleans Saints players are displaying his name on their helmets at practice. And a GoFundMe has been started in his honor and has now raised over $2.2 million. But what is the truth about this incident? Should Jacob Blake be transformed into a woke sportswear label? Well, we all saw the video of Blake's shooting, and we've seen the comments from Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, and so many more. But to understand the shooting on August 23rd, we need to go back to May 3rd. Because of an incident occurring on May 3rd, Blake was charged with third-degree sexual assault, among other things. There are some rumors that he had sex with a minor floating around the internet, but that isn't true, at least as far as we know. To be charged with third-degree sexual assault in Wisconsin, two things need to be true. One, the defendant had sexual intercourse with the victim. Two, the victim did not consent to the sexual intercourse. We now know that the alleged victim was the same woman who called the police on the day that Blake was shot. She called police because Blake, showed up at her place when he wasn't supposed to. And last time he was there, he wound up being charged with third-degree sexual assault. Gee, I wonder why she was so scared. Let's look into what happened on May 3rd. Of course, it's important to note that we live in a society where all persons are innocent until proven guilty. That includes the cops too, by the way, for you on the left. Blake hasn't been prosecuted for this incident as of yet, despite the warrant being issued over a month ago. The alleged victim went to a party in Milwaukee the previous night and came back to her place around 4 a.m. She went to sleep in the bedroom and then was startled awake. Standing above her was Jacob Blake. They had known each other for years, but it was well known that he was not welcome in her home. Imagine the type of person you have to be to do this. Blake had broken into her home and was just creepily standing above her as she slept. She was not alone in bed, however. She was sleeping next to one of her children. While her child slept next to her, Blake proceeded to digitally assault her against her will. There are some really nasty details to this that I'm not going to read. For those who are watching, I'll put it up on the screen and you can read it yourself. After collecting herself following the assault, she ran out of her home after Blake when she realized her car was stolen. Gone. Stolen by Blake. He had also gone through her purse and taken her keys, and it seems like her ATM card because he made 2 unauthorized withdrawals from her bank account. She called 911 and talked to police. Oddly, the police, who are portrayed, of course, as horrible racist monsters by every Democrat, athlete, and celebrity, seemed very protective of the victim and didn't start randomly executing minorities in the complex. Instead, they took a tearful statement from her where she said that the assault, quote, caused her pain and humiliation and was done without her consent. And she was very, quote, humiliated and upset by the sexual assault, according to the record as obtained by the New York Post. The report also noted that she, quote, had a very difficult time telling the officer this and cried as she told how the defendant assaulted her. So some may ask, okay, we get it. He's a bad guy. But what about the incident itself? Let me answer that clearly. This is the incident itself. This incident should be the one we prioritize. This is the Jacob Blake incident. To be super clear here, yes, a woman being raped in her bed next to her child should take priority over an alleged rapist with a knife resisting arrest that was shot by police. Yes, it should. The sexual assault should be the incident everyone is so interested in. I hear a hell of a lot of calls for justice for Jacob Blake. Where are the calls for justice for the victim of his sexual assault? Not to mention his theft and other more minor crimes. Where does she get justice? A lot of people will say, yeah, he might have been a bad guy, but he doesn't deserve to be shot 7 times. And that's true. The penalty in Wisconsin for this type of assault is only 10 years in prison. Do I think that's enough? Glad you asked. No. No, I do not. Of course, you'd also have to add on the penalty for stealing the car and the money from the bank account. Oh, and the allegation that this wasn't a one-time incident. As the victim stated, he physically assaults her, quote, around twice a year when he drinks heavily. The guy basically has a repeating calendar event on his phone for domestic abuse. And add on the resisting arrest, fighting with officers, and making threats. What do you get? What's the appropriate penalty? Let's be generous. We'll call it life in prison. This puts a bit of context around Blake's actions that day. He thought he was running from decades in prison. Decades. So that's probably why he's resisting. It's probably why he's got a knife. It's probably why he somehow pushes through 2 separate attempts to tase him. Look, if after a full investigation, the facts point to the conclusion that this was not a justified shooting, then the officers may very well be charged, and I'm fine with that. But if you're telling me I need to make a choice as to what Jacob Blake incident should be getting all the attention, the choice is easy. Should we be talking about the injustice of an innocent woman who was sexually assaulted in her bed as she slept next to her child? Or should we be talking about the supposed injustice of a frequent domestic abuser, thief, and rapist who was shot after resisting arrest, ignoring clear directions from officers while possessing a knife and walking through a taser a couple of times, not to mention fighting with cops? I have no problem making that choice. How on earth, in the freaking Me Too era, is this guy a hero? Everyone in the public eye should stop and take a minute and think about what they are doing here. Imagine how this victim feels. Imagine how she feels when she sees a WNBA team standing on the court wearing T-shirts that spell out the name of her rapist. Imagine how she feels when she sees footage of Drew Brees and the New Orleans Saints wearing on their helmets the name of her rapist. Imagine how she feels when she sees that thousands of people are paying millions of dollars to her rapist. If we live in a society that cannot recognize how impossibly cruel this is to Jacob Blake's victim, then police brutality is absolutely the last thing we have to worry about.